I've always been a planner. My life is built on schedules, lists, and meticulous organization. At 32, I'm a software engineer in Boston, and everything I do is structured. My apartment reflects that. Every piece of furniture, every light, every digital display has a purpose, a place, and a sequence. Even my smart home system, which I call Orbis, runs custom scripts I've written myself. It's not just convenience. It's control, the kind that brings me peace. For the last 2 years, I've been with Lisa, 27. She's the opposite of me in every way. She's spontaneous, impulsive, a force of energy that enters a room and changes the entire atmosphere. People like her naturally. I thought it was a good balance. I would be the foundation, and she would be the chaotic, beautiful facade. I was the one who planned. She was the one who lived. We've been living together in my apartment for about 9 months. I signed the lease before she moved in. It's solely in my name. I pay nearly all of the rent, about 75%, and all the utilities. Lisa works part-time as a stylist. It worked until it didn't. To celebrate our living situation, I decided to throw a spring party. Not just any gathering, a proper, meticulously planned event. I spent weeks on preparation. I coordinated catering, curated a bar with premium whiskey, tequila, and gin, and perfected Orbis to handle lighting, music, and digital art displays. Every hour of the night had a playlist, every room a mood. I was proud. Lisa was thrilled. She called it the ultimate party trick. Tuesday afternoon, 3 days before the party, she dropped a bomb. "Hey," she said, avoiding my gaze. "Do you know Mike is in town?" My stomach dropped. Mike, her ex. The one she always claimed broke her heart completely. The one she said she was over, but somehow always found a way back into conversations. "I know," I said carefully, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Well, I ran into him today," she continued. "And I invited him to the party on Friday." I stared at her. "You invited your ex to our party, our home, without even asking me." Lisa rolled her eyes. "Alex, don't be like that. It's fine. We're friends. It's mature. He wanted to see the new place. It would be weird not to invite him. I'm not fine with that. Lisa, this is our party, for our friends. It's weird. I don't want him here." Her face hardened. "He's coming. I already told him he could. You can't uninvite him. Don't be paranoid." Her voice carried that dangerous mix of challenge and manipulation. "Be cool, or it's over." The words hit me like a blueprint coming apart in my hands. She was holding our relationship hostage, demanding my compliance. She wasn't asking, she was daring me. And in that moment, something strange happened. The anxiety, the anger, the hurt, it all disappeared. A calm clarity washed over me, like seeing a design flaw I hadn't noticed in a structure I trusted. "You're right," I said quietly, my voice steady. Her smug smile softened immediately. "Yes, I knew you'd understand," she said, her tone triumphal. "No," I corrected. "I'll be very cool." The game had begun. Friday night, the party started. My friends arrived. The apartment looked incredible. Orbis hummed perfectly. Lighting warmed the rooms in a soft amber, and digital art cycled through minimal landscapes. Catering was a hit. Drinks were flowing, and I was the perfect host. Lisa was radiant, wearing a red dress I now realized Mike probably liked. At 9 p.m., the doorbell rang. My heart sank slightly. I smiled and told myself, "Be calm, be in control." I opened the door. Mike was there, exactly the way I expected. Scruffy, casual, carrying himself with the kind of awkward charm Lisa had always loved. "Alex," he said, extending his hand. "Mike, thanks for having me." "Welcome," I said, shaking it firmly, forcing the perfect host smile. Lisa glided over, hugging him. 2 seconds too long. He kissed her cheek. I watched it all silent. Then I turned to her. "Well," I said, "he's here. Have fun." I walked past them, grabbed my jacket, and left. Lisa froze. "What are you doing?" "Just leaving," I said, sliding my phone into my pocket. Her expression went from surprise to fury. "Alex, don't be dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic. I'm being clear." She wanted to see if I'd blink. I didn't. Outside, I felt a strange exhilaration. Calm, controlled, free. The moment I stepped out of my apartment, a strange sense of liberation washed over me. The air in the hallway felt sharper, cleaner, as if I had finally shed the weight of the ultimatum Lisa had placed on me. My friends, Ben and Will, were waiting near the elevator. They'd witnessed the exchange and knew this wasn't a stunt. "Dude, you're really leaving?" Ben asked, incredulous. "Yes," I said calmly. She gave me an ultimatum. I accepted it. "I'm done." We rode the elevator down together. The city lights outside blurred past the glass as I pulled out my phone. A flick of the screen, a few taps, and Orbis was ready. Years ago, as a joke, I had written a script I'd never intended to use seriously. System_shutdown_hard.sh. Tonight, it would finally see action. "Last step," I said to Ben, smirking. Being cool. Back in my apartment, the scene unfolded like a slow-motion disaster. Music that had been carefully curated to set the perfect vibe cut off mid-beat. Lights in every room snapped from warm amber to an unflinching, sterile white that felt like an operating room. The digital art displays went black. For about 30 people, the sudden shift from a carefully orchestrated ambience to blinding chaos was jarring. Lisa froze, frantically tapping on the wall panels that no longer responded. Mike looked around, bewildered. "Whoa, weird," he muttered. A few of my colleagues, ever the opportunists, saw a chance. "Oh, look at the time," one of them said. "I think I need to check on my cat." Early morning. Within 10 minutes, every single guest had vanished. The apartment was left eerily silent. Lisa, Mike, and a handful of her friends remained, standing amid the blinding white light and rapidly cooling food. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed relentlessly. "Lisa, turn it back on now." "Lisa, you're a childish a-hole." "Lisa, turn the lights back on." I replied with one message. "You told me to be cool, or it's over." I chose over. "Please have your things out by the end of the month." Then I blocked her number and went out with Ben and Will for whiskey. My real friends. The fallout began almost immediately. Over the weekend, messages flooded from her friends and family, accusing me of cruelty, of ruining Lisa's life, of being petty. But I knew the truth. I hadn't lost control. I had asserted boundaries. Lisa had overstepped in her own apartment, and it was time she learned consequences. Orbis wasn't just lights and music. It controlled Wi-Fi, streaming, the entire network. When I ran the shutdown, everything went dark. Netflix? Dead. Smart appliances? Dead. The apartment had become a mere box of walls, floors, and furniture. Beautiful, expensive, useless. I spent the weekend decompressing at Ben's, playing video games, ordering pizza. It was peaceful, but I knew the real work was ahead. I was the sole leaseholder. Lisa was a long-term guest. In my state, after 30 days, she had certain tenant rights, but I intended to navigate everything legally. On Monday, I unblocked her, long enough to issue formal notices. "Lisa, the relationship is over. I need you out by the 31st. Her replies were entitled, accusatory, incredulous. She claimed homelessness, lack of savings, even the betrayal of a lifestyle she hadn't truly built. I stayed firm. This was not a negotiation, it was enforcement of boundaries. She escalated. Her mother called, then her friends. She even attempted to get the building manager to change the locks, falsely claiming fear for her safety. I calmly explained the situation. She had no legal right to prevent me from accessing my own apartment. And that's when my planning kicked in. This wasn't a TV drama. I hired a process server, $150. She was officially served with a 30-day notice to quit. The clock was ticking. Every step of the way, I documented. Receipts, timestamps, photos, and witness accounts. Every legal and procedural step I could take, I did. Patience, planning, precision. Lisa didn't know yet how meticulously prepared I was for every eventuality. She thought she had the upper hand. She was about to learn that chaos, when faced with methodical planning, was powerless. The weekend passed in an uneasy calm. Every time my phone buzzed, it was Lisa, her friends, or her family, all trying to guilt or intimidate me. But I had already stepped into the mindset of control. Emotions weren't useful anymore. Only planning and precision mattered. Monday morning, I unblocked Lisa's number briefly to confirm logistics. "Lisa, I'm serious. You have until the 31st to remove your things. Let me know when you'll be moving." She responded with incredulity. "You're kicking me out over a party?" I ignored her and immediately contacted the local police to arrange a civil standby. By Friday, the stage was set. I showed up at my apartment with Ben and Will. Two officers met us in the lobby, calm, professional. "Alex," one of them asked, "ready for the civil standby?" Absolutely, I said. My heart was steady, controlled. We rode the elevator up. I inserted my key into the door. Deadbolt engaged from the inside. A pause, then a knock. Ma'am, one officer began. This is the police. Leaseholder Alex is here to retrieve personal property. You need to open the door. The door creaked open. Lisa stood there, robes slightly disheveled, hair messy. Behind her, Mike was sprawled across my sofa, shirtless. My blood ran cold. You can't just barge in here, she shrieked. The officer sighed. Ma'am, he's on the lease. You're not. We're here to ensure the process is civil. That's it. Mike finally stood. Hey, man, this isn't cool. This is our place now. I turned slowly, the calm edge of authority in my voice. Is your name on the lease? Did you pay last month's $4,200 rent? No? Then sit down, quietly, or you'll be added to the eviction notice. He sank back onto the sofa, awkwardly complying. I stepped inside, methodical. First, the hall closet, Orbis, the heart of my smart system. Every wire, server, and script. Lisa's face paled as she realized the consequence of her actions. You're taking that? Yes. All the lights, music, and displays are mine. You'll have to operate the apartment like a caveman. Will and Ben started carefully boxing my desktop PC, a custom-built workstation I depended on daily. Lisa protested. You can't take the computer. I use that. You have a laptop. That's yours. This workstation is mine. Next, the kitchen. My $900 espresso machine, a gift to myself, went into a box. She wailed. That's ours. I ignored her. Finally, the bar cart. Every single premium bottle, the small batch rye, single malt scotch, artisanal tequila, went into my boxes. Mike protested weakly, but I gave him a look that silenced him instantly. The whole process took 15 minutes. I had brought my own packing materials, labeled everything, and ensured the officers witnessed the procedure. As I reached the door, Lisa was finally crying. You're so petty, Alex. You're stealing. I stopped, holding up the 30-day notice. This is mine. Cruel was your ultimatum. Cruel was inviting your ex to my home. The 30-day clock is ticking. You have until the 31st. I walked out, leaving her standing in the silent, dark, Wi-Fi-less, coffee-less, booze-less apartment. My friends followed, supportive, steady. Outside, the night air felt freeing. The real battle had only begun, but now, I was in control. The week after the civil standby was a lesson in patience, documentation, and the slow grind of bureaucracy. I spent most days at Ben's apartment, my laptop open, working on my firm's projects while keeping meticulous records of every communication with Lisa. Every text, every call, every interaction became a time-stamped entry in a spreadsheet I labeled eviction chronology. Lisa's attempts to manipulate and intimidate me were relentless. Her texts alternated between desperation and anger. You can't really do this. I live here. I'll ruin you. Everyone will know what a monster you are. You're obsessed with me. You can't just take my home. I never responded emotionally. My replies were sparse, calm, and legally precise. You were served a 30-day notice. You have until the 31st to vacate. This is not negotiable. Her mother, Daria, tried her own interventions. She called multiple times, pleading, cajoling, even attempting to guilt me. Alex, honey, she's a mess. You can't be serious. Think of her future. I remained resolute. Daria, Lisa made choices. They have consequences. I've followed the law and given her sufficient time. The deadline is final. Meanwhile, I prepared for the inevitable legal complications. Even though I had the 30-day notice, I knew Lisa might refuse to leave, claiming tenant rights or emotional distress. I hired a lawyer, paying a $500 retainer, and filed an unlawful detainer lawsuit. This ensured that if Lisa didn't comply voluntarily, the courts would enforce her removal. During this period, I also documented the apartment meticulously. Photos of every room, receipts for every item I had purchased, screenshots of the Orbis system shutdown, and witness statements from Ben and Will were organized into a comprehensive folder titled Evidence, Lisa Eviction. Every possible argument she could make was anticipated. Lisa escalated further. She tried to claim that the apartment's utilities were shut off intentionally, that her personal safety was threatened, and even that the smart system had been hacked maliciously. Each claim was easy to disprove. The officers' reports from the civil standby, my receipts, and the timestamps from the Orbis system all confirmed the truth. She was a guest in my apartment, her ex was present illegally, and I had acted within my legal rights. Her friends and social circle chimed in too, sending accusatory messages. "You're such a psycho. How could you treat her like this? You ruined her life over one party." Pathetic. I ignored them. Focused. Detached. Methodical. Each passing day solidified the realization that justice was rarely instantaneous. It required patience, precise planning, and a willingness to endure social backlash. The initial chaos of the party, the emotional attacks from Lisa, and the relentless texts and calls from friends and family were all part of the larger picture. By the middle of the week, my lawyer had confirmed the next steps. If Lisa didn't vacate by the end of the 30 days, the court would issue a default judgment and the sheriff would enforce the eviction. I double-checked the civil standby procedures with local law enforcement to ensure a smooth operation. Throughout all of this, Ben and will remain my anchor. They reminded me to eat, to sleep, to decompress. We spent evenings playing games, drinking whiskey, and discussing strategy. They provided the calm perspective I needed when Lisa's endless texts threatened to draw me back into her emotional turbulence. As the 30-day mark approached, the tension grew. Lisa's messages became frantic. "I can't leave. I have nowhere to go. You're a cold, calculating monster. You've ruined everything." I remained unshaken. Each message was another confirmation that I had made the right choice. The ultimatum was unacceptable, her behavior was manipulative, and my boundaries were non-negotiable. By Friday, the final day of the 30-day notice, I was ready. Documents were prepared, boxes packed, legal counsel on standby, and law enforcement ready for enforcement if necessary. I knew that this wasn't just about reclaiming my apartment. It was about asserting control, enforcing boundaries, and reclaiming my life from someone who had shown no respect for it. The day of the court hearing arrived like a storm slowly building on the horizon. I woke early, dressed in crisp business casual, and reviewed my organized folder of evidence one last time. Time-stamped photos of the apartment before and after Lisa's stay, receipts for the furniture and electronics, screenshots from the Orbis smart system showing the shutdown timeline, the civil standby police report, and the 30-day notice itself. Every detail mattered. Ben drove me to the courthouse. His presence, calm and steady, was a silent reassurance. We walked in, filing past the courtroom doors, past people with their own legal battles, and took our seats. I could feel my pulse steadying. This wasn't about emotion anymore. It was about fact, law, and precision. The judge entered, and the courtroom settled into quiet order. Lisa was already there, her mother Daria sitting behind her, both looking anxious and slightly disheveled. The look on Lisa's face was a mixture of disbelief and defiance. "Alex," the bailiff called, "you may present your case." I stood, calm, deliberate. "Your Honor, I am the sole leaseholder of the apartment in question. On, insert date, I legally served the defendant, Lisa Harper, with a 30-day notice to quit, which is documented and timestamped. She failed to vacate voluntarily." I walked to the evidence table and presented my folder. "Your Honor, here are photographs showing the apartment in pristine condition before the notice, followed by photographs after her occupation, clearly documenting damages. Here are receipts for the $4,000 sofa and other property, and the civil standby police report confirming my lawful entry and removal of personal property." Lisa rose, her voice trembling but loud. "Your Honor, he's abusive. He locked me out, cut off my internet. He's obsessed with me. I have nowhere to go, and this is cruel." I remained calm. "Your Honor, the defendant was a guest, not a tenant. The Orbis system was my property, and I removed it lawfully. She invited an unauthorized occupant, which is documented. All my actions complied with state landlord-tenant law. I did not physically prevent her from leaving. I provided ample time to vacate and attempted to communicate the process clearly." The judge listened attentively, flipping through the evidence I had provided. The timestamps, receipts, and photographs spoke louder than Lisa's emotional appeals. Then came the final piece, the note Lisa left in the apartment after the civil standby. I handed it to the judge. "Your Honor, this is a note left by the defendant, acknowledging the damages done and admitting to the presence of the unauthorized guest." The judge read it carefully, looked at Lisa, and paused. "Ms. Harper, did you write this?" Lisa's face went pale. "Why, yes," she stammered. "Very well," the judge said. "Judgment is entered in favor of Alex Mason. The eviction is confirmed, and damages in the amount of $10,000 are awarded to the plaintiff." Relief washed over me, calm and measured. The legal battle was resolved, but the practical aftermath remained. I collected copies of the judgment and eviction notice, and the court clerk confirmed that the sheriff would post the notice to vacate within 5 business days. Outside the courthouse, Ben and Will exhaled in unison. "Well, that's done," Ben said. I nodded. "Done legally. Now comes the enforcement." The following week was tense but methodical. The sheriff arrived early on the designated day, accompanied by a team to ensure the eviction proceeded without incident. Lisa barricaded herself inside, screaming, crying, and begging for reconsideration, but the deputies remained firm. 15 minutes were given to gather essentials. The rest was moved to the curb. I watched, detached, as the apartment was emptied. It was over. Finally, the chaos, the ultimatums, the manipulation, all ended. I walked through the apartment afterward with the landlord, surveying the damage. Scratches in the hardwood floors, ruined sofa, smashed digital art displays, a sink clogged with flour and coffee grounds. It was malicious, not just careless. Total estimated damages, $11,000. I took photographs, collected receipts, and prepared for small claims court to recover the financial losses. Lisa's actions had left a trail, a record of entitlement and disregard for boundaries that was irrefutable. For the first time in weeks, I felt a profound sense of relief. The apartment was mine again, not just legally, but physically, psychologically, emotionally. I was free from the ultimatum that had held my life hostage. The apartment was mine again, yet stepping inside felt like walking into the aftermath of a storm. The first thing I noticed was the silence. No arguing, no music blaring from speakers, no frantic footsteps or slammed doors, just the echo of my own shoes on the scratched hardwood floor. Ben and Will were with me, ready to help, but I insisted on handling the initial assessment myself. I walked room by room, noting the damages. The once pristine living room now bore long, deep scratches on the floors, ruined upholstery from spilled red wine, and shattered panels of my digital art displays. The kitchen was no better, the sink clogged solid with hardened coffee grounds and flour, cabinets disorganized, and my $900 espresso machine unplugged and lying on its side. "This is insane," Will muttered. "People actually do this?" I shook my head. Entitlement, arrogance, and a complete lack of respect for boundaries. "This isn't personal, it's systematic." We set to work. The first priority was the essentials, making the apartment habitable again. I contacted a plumber to clear the clogged sink, an electrician to inspect the outlets, and a cleaning service to sanitize every surface. Ben and Will help me move boxes of personal items back into place, reassemble furniture, and start the long task of organizing the apartment like the sanctuary it had been before Lisa's invasion. In the process, I reviewed my documentation for small claims. Every receipt, every photo, every piece of correspondence was cataloged. I filed a claim for $10,000 in damages, which included the $4,000 sofa, repairs to the Orbis system that couldn't be replaced, and the professional services required to restore the apartment. The process was bureaucratic and expensive, but methodical, a final step in reclaiming control. Meanwhile, I finally had the quiet I had been craving. No ultimatums, no interruptions, no manipulations. The apartment, stripped of the chaos that Lisa and Julian had brought, became a true reflection of the life I wanted to lead, structured, intentional, and peaceful. The first night back alone, I made a simple dinner and poured a glass of whiskey. I sat on my reclaimed sofa, the Orbis system long gone, replaced by simple, dumb lights that functioned without drama. The silence was comforting, almost therapeutic. I realized that peace wasn't just about removing toxic people from your life. It was about reclaiming space for yourself, both physically and mentally. Messages from Lisa's friends and family kept coming initially, but I blocked, ignored, or replied with calm, factual statements. The pattern was predictable: outrage, attempts at guilt, false claims of hardship. But the law, documentation, and enforcement had created an unbreakable structure. The chaos had a boundary now, one I controlled. Over the next few weeks, the small claims court processed my filings. The judge, presented with time-stamped photos, receipts, and the note left by Lisa, ruled in my favor. The $10,000 judgment was awarded, to be collected over time. Lisa's eviction, coupled with the public record of damages, served as a deterrent to any future attempts to manipulate or intimidate. Julian, her unauthorized guest, was also held accountable in part for the damages. While financial recovery would take years, the psychological victory was immediate. I had survived manipulation, ultimatums, and sabotage, and emerged with my home, my boundaries, and my dignity intact. The apartment, slowly restored, became more than just a place to live. It was a testament to patience, methodical planning, and the refusal to accept unacceptable ultimatums. By the end of the month, the apartment had regained its warmth. Candles flickered on the shelves, books were stacked neatly, and my furniture was arranged exactly as I wanted. The chaos of the past few months became a memory, a lesson etched into every repaired scratch and restored surface. I had reclaimed not just the physical space, but my sense of autonomy, control, and peace. The first morning after reclaiming the apartment, I woke to sunlight spilling through the windows. The city outside was alive, bustling, indifferent to the chaos I had endured. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of clarity and control. I brewed a cup of coffee with my old espresso machine, still functional, though slightly worn from the upheaval, and sat at the dining table reviewing my schedule. Work projects, bills, and personal goals waited for me, but this time, I felt like I could manage everything on my terms. No ultimatums, no surprises, no disrespect for my boundaries. Over the next week, I reflected on the relationship with Lisa. 2 years of ups and downs, moments of connection, laughter, and shared experiences, but ultimately, the defining memory was the ultimatum. Be cool or it's over. That single line had encapsulated the dynamic. Control disguised as choice, manipulation disguised as love. Recognizing it allowed me to release the emotional baggage. I reached out to my friends Ben and Will, not just to recount the events, but to rebuild the social aspect of my life. We spent evenings playing video games, cooking meals, and laughing over beers. It was simple, grounding, and restorative. These friendships, solid and reliable, contrasted sharply with the unpredictable chaos Lisa had brought into my home. The apartment itself became a canvas for rebuilding life. I added small touches, fresh flowers, new minimalist art prints, and strategically placed lighting that didn't need a smart system to work. Each choice was deliberate, each item a reaffirmation of autonomy. No one would dictate the energy of my home but me. I also began enforcing boundaries beyond the apartment. Work relationships were managed with clarity and professionalism. Social interactions outside the apartment included explicit agreements about respect, transparency, and honesty. The experience had taught me that boundaries are not punitive, they are protective. Financial recovery, though slow, was another aspect of rebuilding. The small claims judgment against Lisa was a tangible reminder that actions have consequences. I didn't expect immediate repayment, but every dollar she paid, even $150 at a time, reinforced the principle that accountability matters. Julian's departure and inability to continue his art career due to legal involvement was a side effect, but it underscored the cost of choices made without foresight. By the end of the month, life felt steady again. I hosted a small dinner for close friends, no frills, no ultimatums, just warmth and conversation. The apartment, quiet and under my control, felt like a home again. I realized that reclaiming space is as much about the mind as it is about physical territory. Through the chaos, I had learned 3 vital lessons. First, ultimatums are not love, they are tests of submission. Second, boundaries, when enforced methodically and legally, protect both peace of mind and personal assets. Third, restoration is a process. It requires patience, planning, and the willingness to act decisively. I closed the chapter of Lisa's presence in my life not with anger, but with understanding. The real victory was reclaiming my life on my terms, learning from the chaos, and creating a sanctuary that reflected my values, not someone else's entitlement. Weeks had passed since Lisa and Julian were forcibly removed, yet the apartment felt alive again, not with the chaos of conflict, but with the quiet rhythm of my own life. The silence was no longer empty. It was a signal that I had reclaimed control and, more importantly, peace. I started small, reorganizing my home office, cleaning every surface, and finally completing a shelving project I had been putting off. The space began to feel like mine again, intentionally curated for productivity, comfort, and clarity. Every object, from books to artwork, was chosen consciously, reflecting who I was, not who someone else wanted me to be. Work became a focus. As an architect, my projects required precision and creativity. The mental bandwidth previously drained by constant stress and emotional manipulation was now fully available. I excelled in meetings, executed designs flawlessly, and even took on an ambitious project I had previously postponed. Colleagues noticed a difference. My confidence had returned, tempered by experience, but sharper than ever. Social life, too, evolved. Ben, Will, and I established a regular routine. Friday night dinners, occasional weekend trips, and hours spent playing music or video games. Trust became a cornerstone of these friendships. No surprises, no games, just support and shared experiences. The stark contrast to my time with Lisa was a lesson in valuing relationships built on mutual respect. One afternoon, while sipping coffee and reviewing architectural plans, I realized something important. The apartment wasn't just a physical space anymore. It was a reflection of personal growth. Every repaired scratch, every organized shelf, every flicker of sunlight through the blinds was a testament to resilience and autonomy. I could finally enjoy it without anxiety, without the constant anticipation of drama. I also began exploring hobbies I had neglected. Photography, long walks through the city, and evening journaling became routines. They reminded me of the importance of time spent with oneself, cultivating joy independent of others' approval or presence. Financially, I continued to monitor the small claims repayment from Lisa. It was slow, but the process reinforced patience and the principle that actions have consequences. Julian's disappearance from the scene, returning to his hometown after legal complications, served as a cautionary tale about the ripple effects of choice. By the end of the month, the apartment was fully restored, my routines re-established, and my social circle solidified. I hosted a quiet dinner for Ben and Will, celebrating the return of normalcy. No flashy tech, no extravagant displays, just good food, conversation, and laughter. It was perfect in its simplicity, a stark contrast to the chaos that had defined the last 2 months. Through the ordeal, I had learned to value boundaries, anticipate challenges, and approach conflict with a combination of patience and decisiveness. The experience with Lisa had been costly, in money, time, and emotional energy, but it had also been invaluable in teaching self-respect and the importance of personal space. As I settled into bed that night, the city lights flickering outside my window, I felt a profound sense of ownership over my home, my choices, and my life. The past was a lesson, the future, a space I could shape intentionally. The final stretch of the ordeal was legal, methodical, and emotionally exhausting, but necessary. The 30-day notice I had served Lisa had expired weeks ago, yet she had refused to vacate. By now, I had accepted that this would require professional intervention. I retained a lawyer, filing an unlawful detainer lawsuit. The retainer alone was $500, but the expense was justified. Every document, every receipt, every time-stamped photo of the apartment pre- and post-Lisa's occupancy became evidence. This was no longer about emotion. It was about law, principle, and reclaiming what was rightfully mine. Court dates were set. Lisa's mother, Daria, attempted to intervene multiple times, calling with claims that I was being harsh and unreasonable. I calmly explained the situation. Lisa had issued an ultimatum, disrespected the space I owned, and caused significant damage. Boundaries had been crossed, and accountability was mandatory. Daria's protests fell on deaf ears. The law was clear, and the documentation irrefutable. The day of the eviction, I arrived with Ben and Will as witnesses, accompanied by the sheriff's deputies. Lisa was still inside, dramatically claiming this was her home. The deputies were firm. 15 minutes to gather essentials. The rest would be moved to the curb. Lisa's breakdown was theatrical, screaming, crying, even attempting to delay the process by claiming illness and distress. But the deputies, my lawyer, and the landlord maintained order. She was removed physically, her resistance no longer a factor. Julian, her unauthorized guest, had already fled, leaving behind evidence of the destruction he had contributed to. The walkthrough was sobering. Floors gouged, upholstery stained, digital displays destroyed, and the kitchen in disarray. The landlord estimated $11,000 in damages. My sofa alone accounted for $4,000. The total reflected both material loss and the chaos inflicted upon the apartment. Yet, amidst the frustration, I felt a sense of calm. Justice wasn't flashy. It was deliberate, thorough, and inevitable. I filed claims in small claims court, presenting evidence, photos, receipts, and the note Lisa had left behind, admitting to intentional damage. The judge reviewed each piece meticulously. Lisa attempted to deflect blame, citing her emotional state and my perceived harshness. The court, however, was unpersuaded. Judgment was rendered in my favor. Full recovery of $10,000 in damages, enforceable through wage garnishment if necessary. The victory was not immediate in its effect. Financial restitution would trickle in slowly, but it was complete in principle. The apartment was mine, restored as best as possible, and my autonomy reaffirmed. Lisa's credit, rental history, and public record reflected the consequences of her actions. Julian, as an unauthorized occupant responsible for part of the damage, faced his own repercussions. In the aftermath, I reflected on the experience. The ordeal had been expensive, stressful, and emotionally taxing, but it reinforced three key principles. Personal boundaries must be respected, ultimatums are not negotiation, and accountability has a price. The chaos Lisa and Julian attempted to impose had been neutralized not through anger, but through planning, law, and unwavering adherence to principle. Finally, I could breathe. The apartment was not just a physical space. It was a symbol of regained control, of lessons learned, and of personal strength. Quietly, methodically, I had reclaimed not just property, but dignity, peace, and autonomy. Months had passed since Lisa and Julian were removed, and life had finally settled into a rhythm that felt both comfortable and intentional. The apartment, once a stage for conflict and manipulation, had transformed into a sanctuary. Every corner reflected decisions made freely and thoughtfully. I spent mornings with coffee on the balcony, observing the city waking up, absorbing its energy without the weight of anxiety or drama. Evenings were dedicated to projects, both professional and personal. I returned to architecture with renewed focus, taking on ambitious designs and seeing them through meticulously. Each completed project reinforced the confidence that had been tested and proven resilient through the recent turmoil. My social life flourished. Ben and Will remained close companions, their loyalty and support unwavering. We explored new hobbies together, weekend hikes, photography excursions, and culinary experiments in my kitchen. Friends felt safe in my space. They respected boundaries without question. There was no drama, only genuine connection. Financial recovery, while slow, was steady. Payments from the small claims judgment trickled in, each installment a reminder that accountability has consequences. Julian had returned to his hometown, quietly fading from my awareness, a minor footnote in the story of my life. Lisa, living with her mother, faced the reality of her choices, an eviction and damaged credit record serving as permanent markers of the chaos she had caused. I took time to reflect on the lessons learned. Boundaries are essential. Upholding them protects both emotional and physical spaces. Ultimatums are not love. They are manipulations that test the limits of patience and self-respect. Justice is deliberate. Fast or flashy victories are rare. Lasting resolution requires patience, planning, and adherence to principle. With these lessons internalized, I could approach life with confidence and clarity. The apartment, once a battleground, now served as a canvas for creativity, comfort, and intentional living. I added small personal touches, framed photographs from travels, minimalist furniture reflecting simplicity, and plants that brought life into the space. Romance, when it returned, would do so on my terms. I understood the qualities necessary for a healthy partnership: respect, trust, and mutual support. Past mistakes informed future choices, creating a foundation stronger than any blueprint or architectural plan. One Friday evening, I hosted a quiet gathering. Ben, Will, a few colleagues. The evening was filled with laughter, music, and conversation. No chaos, no ultimatums, no guests whose presence was unwelcome. The apartment hummed with warmth, the lights gentle, the music soft but engaging. For the first time in years, I felt the full measure of serenity and control. As I stood in the living room, watching friends converse, I realized how far I had come. The turmoil with Lisa and Julian had been a crucible, testing patience, principles, and resilience. I emerged stronger, wiser, and more attuned to my own needs. Life was no longer about surviving manipulation. It was about thriving with intentionality and clarity. Finally, I allowed myself to feel a sense of gratitude for friends who stood by me, for the lessons learned, and for the space to rebuild not just an apartment, but a life grounded in respect, autonomy, and peace. The past was behind me, its echoes lingering only as reminders of strength gained. The future was mine to design, deliberately, thoughtfully, and freely.